So, I've been looking into the backstory of Hercules. The mythical figure who completed the 12 labors after having accidentally killed his family, being tricked by a god, finds redemption, and then dies. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, did you know that he's in Marvel Comics? So, for most people, Hercules in Marvel Comics looks like this. But did you know that before this interpretation of the character, there was an entirely different version of the character, and his name was... Well, his name was still Hercules. I mean, obviously, right? Because comic book companies have a history of doing this. And you know what? It's genius. You take a famous character and you force them into a story and you instantly increase its marquee value because that famous character is instantly recognizable by the masses. But even better than that is you don't have to pay any licensing fees because in 99% of the cases, the copyrights on these characters have expired, or in some cases, they never existed at all. So I bet you're saying to yourself, what a deal! Are there any drawbacks to such a stupendous concept? Well, yes. The main drawback is that if anyone can use the character without limits, everyone will use that character without limits. Hercules alone has been used countless times by countless companies. He's a Marvel character, but did you know he's also a DC Comics and an Archie Comics character and a Quality Comics character? And that's just for comic books. That doesn't count all of his appearances in films, video games, Disney. But anyway, today we are going to talk about Hercules as he was portrayed in Timely Comics. Hercules made his first appearance in the 16th issue of Young Allies. This is the first interpretation of the character where he is very much just his original mythological self, if such a thing can be said. He has enhanced strength due to his divine lineage being traced back to Zeus, but other than that, we don't really get to learn very much about him. The story is titled Battle of the Giants, and it is a Tommy Time story. For those who don't know, Tommy Time is a Golden Age kid who has a magical clock which he can use to travel through time. And he got that clock from a genie he found in a lake, but that's not really important right now. In this Tommy Time story, we find him bored at a museum learning about ancient history. Apparently, Hercules at some point had a wrestling match with a giant named Antaeus, and he won. Tommy gets the bright idea that he wants to go back in time and see this fight happen in person. So, back in ancient times, Antaeus has the village under siege, and the villagers are sacrificing their women to him to keep him happy, otherwise he will destroy the village. However, this doesn't last long because Hercules shows up to break the siege and defeat Antaeus. However, even though Hercules is much stronger, he can't seem to defeat Antaeus because he keeps reviving endlessly. He's basically immortal. This is when Tommy Time remembers his history education and discovers that Antaeus is a child of Terra, the mother of Earth, as all giants are, and as long as he is touching the Earth, he will be invincible. So Hercules lifts him over his head and holds him there until his power is completely drained, defeating him once and for all. And this is interesting because what we have here is essentially like a basic by the numbers interpretation of the character. He's a big dude, he's really strong, he wears a loincloth, descended from the gods, which is all fine. However, this is not the interpretation that Timely Comics would continue to use. In fact, in Hercules, the very next appearance, he would be completely different. He can even be considered like a completely different character. He still maintains his tremendous strength, but this time he has a different name. His name is Varen David, with a V, V-A-R-E-N, David. He is the son of Professor David, who raised Varen in the Arctic wastes away from civilization. In this Arctic environment, Varen would have no outside influences poisoning his development, so he was raised as sort of a pure human specimen. He also trained every day to have the strongest muscles and the smartest mind. He is a master of all sciences as well as extremely durable. However, and unfortunately, this wouldn't last long because as Varen came of age, Professor David would die, leaving him alone. Then the myth of a giant living sort of Northman would attract some circus performers who would find and capture Varen and bring him back to society as a sideshow in their carnival. And this is finally when Varen is given the name Hercules. However, all of this turns out to be a terrible idea because a massive bull escapes from its cage and goes on a rampage. Luckily, Hercules has the power to stop it. However, during the fight, he snaps the bull's neck, killing it. This act of heroism inspires Hercules to use his strength to make the world a better place. Unfortunately, this also means he needs to leave the circus. He defeats his captors easily enough and escapes the circus. Now he is free to become the superhero that he was born to be, and almost immediately his skills are needed when a dam breaks free, spilling water all over this valley. Luckily, using his incredible strength, Hercules uproots a series of trees and boulders and builds a dam to block the path of water. Then, later, at his new home, he reads a newspaper which informs him of the terrible plague of crime which has gripped the city. Realizing that he can use his powers to stomp out crime, he decides he wants to go to the city. So now, Hercules, at this point in his history, kind of has a new lease on life. He didn't have much direction when his father died, but now that he knows about the existence of the foul disease that is crime, he has made it his life's work to do battle against crime wherever he may find it. So he goes to the big city because he wants to make a difference, but it is here where Hercules would find his greatest opposition. I'm talking about a supervillain, an arch nemesis for Hercules himself. The story starts off in the circus of all places, which is strange because Hercules had escaped the circus in the last story. But this circus is actually in turmoil right now because the tent pole happens to be falling apart. Luckily, Hercules is there to brace it and save all of the people. But what caused the tent pole to shatter in the first place? Well, it was an earthquake. But not a natural earthquake. Hercules discovers that there is a huge machine burrowing underground, but this just isn't a normal machine. This machine is piloted by none other than the evil mad scientist, Dr. Limo. Hercules follows the massive machine to the hidden estate of Professor Limo, but is overcome by the machine's massive cannon. Some henchmen are mere inches away from putting Hercules to death when Limo stops them. He believes Hercules to be the perfect specimen, which he technically is, and wants to complete dastardly experiments on his body. But this turns out to be a horrible mistake. Hercules is strapped to a gurney, but his body is too pure. None of the medications will work on him, so he easily escapes, sending Professor Limo running out of the room. In a desperate act to stop Hercules, Limo turns the machine's cannon on his own estate, burying Hercules under tons of rubble. But Hercules is just too damn powerful to be put down so easily, and he simply walks out of the rubble mostly unharmed. Meanwhile, Limo makes his way to the city with his massive machine. Hercules catches up to the machine and tries to destroy it, but it has some kind of force field around it. This is when Hercules gets a fantastic idea. He hides underneath a manhole cover. Realizing that the machine cannot possibly be protected from underneath, he waits for the thing to drive over him, and then he bursts upward, lifting the machine into the air and slamming it down again. This destroys the machine once and for all, which means the city is saved by the powerful Hercules, who believes it's his duty to use his strength to help others. So obviously this isn't it for Hercules. This isn't the last of his appearances. He would go ahead and have a revitalization after Marvel Comics turned to Timely. He would make a reappearance in the Thor series in 1965, where he would actually battle Thor in a sort of Greek mythology versus Norse mythology kind of story. One of the giant-sized Thors, I believe. And from there, he would go on to have a fairly rich history in the Marvel Universe. But this is also a completely different interpretation of the character. This Hercules would be a god and the literal son of Zeus, more in line with the traditional interpretations from mythology. Varan David himself pretty much never shows up again. And this is a good thing, because the best interpretations of these characters are the ones that are true to their origins. For example, did you know that King Arthur and his knights are part of the DC universe? They were introduced in a crossover with Batman in Batman Comics. Also, Robin Hood, he was also introduced into DC comic continuity through a crossover with Batman. Also, Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. All of which are in Marvel, just to name a few. And they all have such rich history in comics that expand upon, but also honor their literary origins. But what do you think? Do you like it when comic book companies take historic characters or even ancient characters and bring them into modern settings? This is something that I definitely love. I definitely love it when Superman teams up with King Arthur and Batman fights Robin Hood. I love that kind of crap. It's tasty to me. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Do you like the interpretation of Hercules to be modern, or do you like their own spin on it? Do you like when ancient characters are reintroduced into modern continuity? Let me know. Let's discuss. But for now, that is enough rambling from me. If you liked reading this comic book with me and you want to read more comics with me, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to donate to my website, HeroicStudios.org, so that I can do bigger projects and bring you guys even better content. But until next time, nerds, stay heroic.